So the other day I saw something on Facebook that first of all made me really proud and happy to see, but really got me thinking as well. There was a comment that somebody left about, well, first of all, the post was about why nowadays it seems that people who have less education make more money than people who have multiple degrees or doctorates and whatnot. And I thought that was pretty interesting because it's like, well, here I am sitting with two master's degrees, and I think I made pretty decent money. I've done pretty well for myself. So I, was interested in that topic. And as I began to scroll through the comments, one of the comments said, "Dreamers are killing it in just about every industry." And like that made me very proud because I've always considered myself a dreamer. I've always been told like I have pink um, colored glasses on and that I live in a dream world and fantasy land. Um, Actually, one of my coworkers said, the thing with Duran is that she wants to stop and smell all the roses. And I was like, and why is that a
Mm,
problem? I couldn't understand like how that would be a bad thing. But being in, corporate environment, I think
mm,
there's not a lot of flexibility or acceptance of people like that, right? There's not a lot of desire to accommodate people who are different or people who kind of have their head in the clouds. And so, becoming a mental health therapist, I felt like that was my place, right? This is the place where I can pour my heart and love people and that be appreciated and celebrated. And I think that that is still very true. And I absolutely love what I do. I think I'm really good at it for those reasons because I believe that people have the power to change. Um, I tend to be very optimistic about what people can accomplish and what their potential is. And I think that that really helps me in the therapeutic environment. So, but the other part of this is that it makes you feel like there's always more, right? When you have that dreamer spirit, that dreamer's attitude, there's always something more that you feel like you can accomplish, something more that you can do or contribute to the world. Particularly being in the military for 16 years, straight out of high school, at 18 years old, this is pretty much the only thing I knew. That the military is all about conforming and routine and structure and boundaries, and that's always been really challenging for me. And I never quite understood why. So I sat down with a mentor who just so happens to be a chaplain, and she's trained in Myers Briggs personality type indicator. And so she went over my results with me, and she said, "Oh my goodness, this makes so much sense." And I was like, "What?" And she was like, "Your personality type, you just love people." And I was like, "Yeah, like that's not news." I realized that, but how do I fix it was kind of my thing. Like, okay, now that you know what I know to be the problem, how do we fix it? And she said, "Oh no, you don't need to fix it. You don't need to change." And I was like, "Well, how am I going to survive in this environment where that is not appreciated? That free spiritness, that thinking outside the box is not celebrated. How am I going to survive in this environment being who I am? So I need to change. I need to fix it." And she said, "No, God has a special place for your personality type." And I was like, "No, that doesn't help me here on earth." At the time, I just could not see how any of this was positive, right? And then actually, the attack on Paris happened the following day, and I found myself in a really, really, really sad place. And I just couldn't understand why I was so different. Like, why is it that I take these things so personal? Why do I care so much when other people seem to, not blink at all? Every death that's happened in our community in America, every event that's taken place has been a huge tragedy and a huge loss to me personally. And I just felt like, somebody has to do something. There has to be something that we can do to bring more love into the world. I just couldn't feel comfortable continuing to see these things happen and not do something. Particularly with all the deaths and the murders of Black people by police officers and by ourselves, just all the loss that's happening in our community. And I started to think, well, maybe it's personal to me because now I have a son. I have a Black child who will grow up and face these challenges. But I think it's not, it's more than that. I've always been this way. I remember in social justice class, first of all, that was my favorite class. But I really took things personal. That was a really challenging time for me because some of the things that people were saying, I was like, they just don't get it. They can't possibly understand what it's like to be in that kind of environment. And I think I developed a sense of passion and love for those type of communities or those environments because I grew up in them. I know them; they are me. I feel like, and like they say you can take the girl out the country, you can't take the country out the girl. I feel like that burning passion of resilience is still inside of me. So a little bit about my story. Some people may know it, have heard the interview the other day. But I grew up very, very poor. My mother was addicted to crack cocaine, and I was the oldest of three girls. So I was always in charge. I was always the one who had to keep things together and be the responsible one and not to let things fall apart. And I think from that experience, I learned that my needs didn't matter, that everybody else came first, and my sole purpose in life was to make sure everybody else was okay, right? So I became a natural caretaker. And I really owned that persona or that purpose, if you will. And I think throughout life, I really struggled. People would say, oh, you just got to find yourself, you got to love yourself. You got to be happy with yourself. And I never really understood what that meant because I was always so focused on others. Even with, my success, if you will, I went to school to help others. I was like, I just want to get a degree in helping. I knew that I wanted to dedicate my life and my passion and my professional abilities towards helping others. That was something that was just always in me. It wasn't something I could easily separate from. So with all that being said, it's kind of like, okay, well, that's fine and dandy, but when do you get to live your own life? When do you get to value who you are, what you want, what you need? And someone asked me about this time last year, actually, what do you want? What do you want for your life? And being in the military for so long, fresh out of high school, I honestly didn't know. I've been told my whole adult life where to go, what to wear, what to do for work. A lot of my life was dictated for me. So I really didn't know, okay, now that I'm 4 years out from retirement, what's mine? What's going to be the thing that I can own for myself and my contribution to the world? So I remembered, first of all, that passion for social justice and for people who look like me and come from where I come from. It wasn't something that I easily accepted because I knew that other people wouldn't accept it. They wouldn't understand. They wouldn't get it. So I very much tried to hide it and almost ignore it. I was just like, if I can pretend that that doesn't exist for now, I'll be able to get by on my day-to-day situation. And so I began to deny a part of who I was. And I think that's when I really struggled because I wasn't being true to myself. I wasn't being true to anybody around me. And I was pretty miserable. So the longer I tried to pretend that that wasn't what I wanted, that wasn't who I was, the worse it got for me as far as my own true happiness. Until recently, I just decided, or not, some situations decided for me that you can only be true to yourself. You can't pretend. You can't try to be what other people want you to be. It just doesn't work. So as I failed at that more and more, and it became more evident that I'm not going to be able to be what they want me to be, I started to consider the idea of tapping back into who do I want to be, what do I want to stand for, what do I want my legacy in life to be about. And as things got worse on the other end, they got better as far as me finding myself and loving and appreciating and accepting the real me. And why I say accepting the real me is because at times I felt like a unicorn. Like I'm in the military, I'm not the norm. My hair, my body shape, how I think, everything about me is different. So I feel like somebody that doesn't exist in this environment. So like I said, I always tell people I felt like a unicorn. So I said, I wonder if there's other unicorns out there, and that's my message is find your people, find your unicorns, like whoever you relate to the most, whatever you are deep down inside of you, be that, own that, and go find other people who appreciate that. Because that's when I felt like I was able to celebrate all of my greatest assets and all of my greatest potential. So that's my message for today, and I just want to leave you guys with that. Look forward to giving you guys this whole presentation. I have slides, I have videos, I have all kinds of things to kind of further explain how I went through my journey and how that might help you in yours.